Imagine this. You're sitting in a room full of people. You're physically present, but mentally, you're somewhere else. You hear their voices, murmurs of laughter, the hum of small talk, but it all feels distant, disconnected. Your mind isn't engaged. It's not that you're bored, not really, but there's a strange absence inside you, a hollow feeling that no amount of socializing seems to fill. On the outside, you're performing the role of a good conversationalist. You smile, nod, offer polite responses. You understand the nuances of social interaction, perhaps better than anyone in the room, but the emotions others seem to feel, those undercurrents of excitement, empathy, or even anger, don't resonate with you. They're just foreign. What's more unsettling is that it doesn't always feel like this is a temporary state. You've had this experience before. Over and over, you've felt this absence creeping in, not only in social settings but in your daily life. You've tried to escape it, gone to new places, met new people, tried to inject more intensity into your experiences. But nothing changes. The numbness remains, and the deeper you reflect on it, the more it feels like a void that has always been there, one that you simply didn't have words for until now. Now imagine this feeling as a daily companion. Imagine it seeping into your relationships, your work, even your creative endeavors. It's as if a fog surrounds everything you do, and though you know you are capable of great intelligence, creativity, and insight, none of it ever seems to break through the haze. What if this emotional numbness, this inexplicable detachment, wasn't just an anomaly? What if it was, in fact, a natural byproduct of the very thing that makes you intellectually sharp in the first place? You might dismiss this idea at first. After all, isn't intellect supposed to be the key to understanding and navigating life's complexities? Why would being intelligent, deeply analytical, highly logical, and mentally agile lead to emotional numbness? Shouldn't those traits sharpen emotional awareness rather than dull it? But here's the paradox. The more intelligent you become, the more likely you are to experience this feeling of detachment. The brain, in its ceaseless quest to understand the world, can sometimes overlook the very emotions that make us human. Instead of engaging with the messy, chaotic depths of human emotion, the intelligent mind tends to compartmentalize, analyze, and calculate. The result? A growing chasm between thought and feeling. This emotional numbness isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's far more subtle and insidious than that. It's the quiet erosion of emotional connection, the gradual withdrawal from life's emotional complexities, until even the simplest joys seem distant, like memories of a life once lived. You might find yourself wondering, why is it that the more I know, the less I feel? Is this a symptom of genius, or is it a deep philosophical consequence of human nature itself? The truth, it seems, lies in the tension between intellect and emotion. Intelligence, in its most evolved form, can create vast networks of knowledge, dissecting ideas, dissecting lives, and even understanding the nature of suffering. But knowledge, no matter how vast, often cannot bridge the gap between cognition and emotion. It's as if the more complex your understanding becomes, the harder it is to reconnect with the raw, visceral experience of feeling. And when that happens, something deeper begins to break down. You may find yourself asking, is this really living, or merely existing in the mind's maze? But even as you ponder this, another thought strikes you. Are you truly alone in this? Perhaps other people, even those you admire for their emotional depth, might be grappling with a similar experience in their own way. Perhaps their emotional numbness simply manifests differently, or perhaps they're caught in a different trap altogether, one where emotion reigns without the clarity that comes with intellect. And so, the question emerges, why do highly intelligent people often feel emotionally numb? And could this be a condition not just of the mind, but of existence itself? Could there be an inherent tension between intellect and emotion that we have yet to truly understand? As you sit with these questions, you begin to feel an urgency, a need to uncover what lies beneath this paradox. What lies at the heart of this emotional numbness that so many seem to experience but few speak of? There's only one way to answer this, to explore the hidden problem, to understand why this disconnect exists in the first place. And in doing so, you may begin to see that what you're really looking for is not just the answers to a psychological dilemma, but the key to understanding your own soul. In the next section, we'll delve into the hidden problem itself, how the very forces that shape our understanding of the world also determine the limits of our emotional lives. And in the process, we may discover that this paradox is not something to be feared, but something to be understood. It's a troubling paradox. The more we know, the less we seem to feel. But why does this occur? To understand the root of emotional numbness in highly intelligent people, we need to look at the interplay between intellect, perception, and emotion, an intricate dance that stretches across psychology, philosophy, and even the very nature of human existence itself. The first step is to recognize that intelligence, by its very nature, is a mechanism of detachment. Intelligence isn't just the ability to know facts, it's the ability to abstract, to step outside of immediate experience and analyze it from a distance. It is the power of the mind to transcend the present moment and view it from a higher plane. But this very capacity, this cognitive distance, comes at a price. The more we abstract and categorize the world around us, the less we live directly in it. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, would argue that this detachment isn't just an incidental consequence of intelligence, it is a fundamental aspect of the human psyche. In his work on the conscious and unconscious mind, Jung wrote about the process of individuation, the journey toward the self. According to Jung, in the pursuit of understanding and self-knowledge, many individuals, especially those with high intellectual capabilities, become over-identified with their thinking minds. They detach from their emotional selves in the process, believing that rationality alone is the path to wisdom. But this kind of detachment, while it may grant clarity of thought, does not allow for true emotional integration. As Jung wrote, the intellect can only illuminate, but it does not nourish the heart. And here lies the trap. The more intelligent a person becomes, the more they rely on their intellect to navigate the world. But intellect alone is not enough to guide the heart. It can identify patterns, solve problems, and understand complex systems, but it struggles to penetrate the depths of human emotion. Emotions are messy, irrational, and unquantifiable. They cannot be solved or catalogued in the same way as ideas. This inability to truly feel is further compounded by the philosophy of existential thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche spoke of the overman, the individual who transcends conventional morality and values. He suggested that in the process of becoming more than what one is, the individual might be forced to sever ties with traditional emotional anchors, things like family, faith, and communal belonging. The overman becomes a solitary figure, driven by reason and self-determination. Yet in this solitude, he often sacrifices emotional connection. Nietzsche understood the price of intellectual independence, and he warned that in seeking to transcend the limits of the ordinary human experience, we might lose something deeply human in the process. This brings us to another philosophical figure, Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer's philosophy, rooted in pessimism, viewed human suffering as an inevitable result of desire. He suggested that the intellect, in all its brilliance, does not provide the release from suffering. Instead, it merely makes us acutely aware of it. For Schopenhauer, intellectual pursuits were a distraction from the true experience of life's pain and emotional depth. The more intelligent one became, the more they were burdened by the endless desires of the mind. This idea echoes in the lives of those who experience emotional numbness. Highly intelligent people are often consumed by an inner dialogue of constant analysis, examining themselves, their relationships, the world around them, all in the search for meaning or order. But the very act of analyzing and dissecting emotions, be it joy, love, or sadness, creates a distance from those emotions themselves. Instead of feeling them deeply, you observe them as an outsider, trapped in your own awareness of their complexity. What's more, this intellectualization of emotion isn't just a passive process. It is often a defense mechanism. When faced with overwhelming feelings that threaten to unravel the neatly constructed mental frameworks of an intelligent mind, there is a natural tendency to shut them out, to analyze them, to control them. The emotional landscape becomes a battlefield, and reason is summoned to defend against the flood of unmanageable sensations. As Aldous Huxley once said, the more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude. Solitude, in this case, becomes an emotional sanctuary where intellect can control the chaos of feeling. But this retreat into the mind doesn't solve the issue, it only compounds it. The very essence of being human lies in the ability to experience life fully, emotionally, physically, and intellectually. Without emotional engagement, intellect becomes sterile. It becomes a sterile map of the world, devoid of the visceral color that makes existence meaningful. At this point, we might ask, why does this happen? Why are we so drawn to intellectual solutions to our emotional problems? Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, might argue that the human inclination to intellectualize emotions is tied to our desire for control and certainty. We want to explain away the chaos of life, to reduce it to something predictable, understandable, and manageable. But the very essence of our emotional experience lies in its unpredictability, in its irrationality. We are, as Sartre would say, condemned to be free. We are free to feel whatever we want, but this freedom also means we have no predetermined meaning or purpose to guide us. Emotions, unlike thoughts, don't provide us with that certainty. They are not confined by reason or logic. But the more we try to understand them, to categorize them or rationalize them, the more we lose touch with their raw power. We become observers of our own emotional lives rather than participants. And in this observation, something important is lost. The essence of being. What we are left with, then, is a paradox. The more intelligent we become, the more we distance ourselves from the very experiences that make us feel alive. We have the tools to understand the world, but we no longer understand ourselves. The intellect, in its thirst for control, ultimately traps us in a prison of our own making. Now that we've begun to uncover the roots of this emotional numbness, we must ask, what are its deeper consequences? How does this tension between intellect and emotion shape the way we live, not just internally, but in our relationships, our work, and our place in society? In the next section, we'll explore how this paradox plays out in everyday life, quietly influencing not only the lives of highly intelligent individuals, but the structure of society itself. The paradox of emotional numbness in highly intelligent people doesn't remain confined to the isolated corridors of the mind. It spills out, quietly seeping into all aspects of life. It shapes relationships, influences career paths, and colors one's perceptions of the world. And yet, despite its profound impact, it often goes unnoticed, dismissed as a temporary malaise, or misunderstood as mere introversion. But the truth is more unsettling. Emotional numbness is not simply an internal, private issue. It has deep, silent consequences that ripple through one's personal life and extend into the fabric of society itself. Take relationships, for example. Relationships are, at their core, emotional experiences. They require vulnerability, emotional resonance, and a shared understanding of human imperfection. Yet for someone who is intellectually sophisticated, these core elements of connection can feel either foreign or cumbersome. They may find themselves analyzing their interactions, dissecting every word, gesture, and emotional cue, rather than simply feeling them, in the presence of emotional complexity. The highly intelligent person becomes a detached observer, a scholar of the moment, rather than a participant. And in this detachment, something critical is lost: the ability to truly connect. Romantic relationships in particular often require a surrender to unpredictability, to the chaos of human emotion. But for the highly intellectual, this unpredictability becomes a source of anxiety, a challenge to their desire for control and understanding. Instead of diving into the raw, messy beauty of love, they might find themselves rationalizing every aspect of it. What is the correct way to love? What is the ideal balance between emotional need and personal freedom? Is this person truly right for me, or am I simply experiencing a fleeting infatuation? These questions, while intellectually stimulating, only push the experience of love further out of reach. It's like trying to measure the warmth of the sun with a thermometer. It doesn't capture the feeling of sunlight on your skin. Instead of warmth, there's distance, and the very thing that makes love vibrant and alive is reduced to a logical problem to be solved. Friendships, too, are not immune. The deeply intellectual often surround themselves with other sharp minds, but these friendships may not be as emotionally fulfilling as they might seem on the surface. The conversations are stimulating, the exchanges of ideas exhilarating, but there's a limit to how much intellectual engagement can replace emotional closeness. Without shared emotional experiences, there's a coldness that undercuts the connection. The intellect becomes a barrier, a wall that separates one person from another. You may share the same interests, the same values, even the same worldview, but without the emotional vulnerability that makes a friendship meaningful, something vital is always missing. The consequences extend into the workplace as well. Highly intelligent individuals often excel in environments that value logic, analysis, and efficiency. Their ability to process information rapidly, solve complex problems, and think strategically makes them invaluable assets in any professional setting. But beneath the surface, this intellectual prowess can create an inner turmoil. The emotional numbness that comes with intellectual isolation seeps into the very way they approach their work. When you're emotionally detached from the work you do, it's easy to slip into a pattern of mechanistic performance, where tasks are completed not with passion, but with the cold efficiency of a machine. You may excel, but you never fully engage. You might rise through the ranks, achieve impressive milestones, and gain recognition for your accomplishments. But in the process, something vital is always missing. Success feels hollow, like a fleeting accomplishment that never quite lands. This detachment can also manifest in how one deals with failure or setbacks. A person who operates primarily from intellect is less likely to experience the emotional fallout from failure the way others do. They may analyze their mistakes, break them down into digestible pieces of logic, and strategize for improvement. But this intellectual approach doesn't leave room for the emotional processing that failure often requires. Without acknowledging the emotional weight of defeat, whether it's disappointment, frustration, or sadness, there's no opportunity for healing or growth. The wounds remain, buried under layers of logic, never truly being addressed. Moreover, the societal impact of this emotional numbness cannot be overlooked. In a world that increasingly values intellectual achievement over emotional intelligence, the paradox becomes self-perpetuating. We live in a society that rewards cognitive prowess. Those who can think critically, analyze deeply, and solve complex problems are revered. But emotional intelligence, the ability to navigate the turbulent waters of human feelings, often takes a back seat. As the world becomes more cognitively complex, with technology accelerating our need to process vast amounts of information, the emotional realm is left behind, overlooked as an inconvenient complication. The highly intelligent are lauded for their cognitive abilities, while the emotional challenges they face are often dismissed as personal weaknesses or misunderstood as simple mood disorders. This cultural tendency to prioritize intellectual achievement over emotional connection creates a feedback loop, where emotional numbness is not only normalized but even encouraged. People are taught to value productivity, analysis, and efficiency, while emotions are relegated to the background as secondary concerns. And as more individuals become ensnared in this cycle, the emotional landscape of society becomes impoverished. Emotional connection, empathy, and vulnerability, the very traits that sustain meaningful relationships and foster a sense of collective well-being, are slowly eroded. But the consequences of emotional numbness are not limited to individual lives or societal structures alone. There is a deeper, existential toll that this emotional disconnect takes. When one is trapped in the labyrinth of their own intellect, the world outside becomes increasingly difficult to navigate. The ability to find meaning in life's simplest joys, like the taste of a warm meal, the laughter of a friend, or the comfort of a quiet moment, diminishes. Instead, the highly intelligent person is left in a state of perpetual satisfaction, unable to reconcile the vastness of their intellect with the smallness of their emotional experience. They may find themselves haunted by an existential void, a sense that something is missing, but unsure what it is. This feeling, which might be perceived as a vague sense of emptiness or disillusionment, is, in truth, a reflection of the disconnect between thought and feeling. The more one seeks meaning in the intellectual realm, the less one can find it in the emotional. The tension between intellect and emotion becomes a constant internal battle, a battle that quietly erodes one's sense of self and leaves them drifting in a sea of abstraction, unable to touch the depths of their own humanity. And so, we are faced with a profound realization. The emotional numbness experienced by highly intelligent people isn't just a minor issue. It is a deeply woven thread that shapes the fabric of our existence. It affects the way we connect with others, the way we approach our work, and the way we understand ourselves. And yet, it remains largely invisible, both to those who experience it and to the society that rewards intellectual achievement above all else. But what if this numbness, this silence, is not the end of the story? What if there's a way to break free from this invisible grip, to reconnect with the emotional vitality that has been long buried? In the next section, we'll explore how this disconnect can be overcome and how highly intelligent individuals can begin to reclaim their emotional lives in a way that feels authentic and liberating. At this point, you may feel trapped, a prisoner of your own mind. You've uncovered the deep psychological and philosophical roots of emotional numbness, seen how it infiltrates your relationships, work, and sense of self. You've come to realize that this numbness is not simply a personal affliction, but a silent, insidious force shaping the very structures of society. But what if the very thing you've been struggling against, your intellect, could become the key to breaking free from this emotional paralysis? The idea that intellect, the source of your emotional numbness, could also serve as the means of escape might sound paradoxical, but therein lies the opportunity for liberation. The truth is, there is a radical shift in perspective available to you, one that challenges everything you thought you knew about intellect and emotion. It's a shift that can begin with a single, powerful realization. Emotions are not the opposite of intellect, they are its essential counterpart. This is where the rebellion begins. To break free from the emotional numbness caused by over-intellectualization, you must stop seeing intellect and emotion as competing forces. You must stop treating one as the rational control and the other as an unpredictable chaos. In truth, intellect and emotion are interdependent, two sides of the same coin. To fully experience life, to reclaim the vitality that has been missing, you must learn how to balance both. This balance starts with embracing the idea that emotions are not weaknesses or distractions from intellect, they are a fundamental part of what makes us human. When you can allow yourself to feel deeply, without over-analyzing or controlling your emotions, you break the chains of intellectual superiority that have kept you trapped in a cycle of detachment. You stop seeing your feelings as a threat to your reason and instead begin to see them as the gateway to deeper understanding. The philosopher and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, offers a profound insight into this process of emotional reclamation. Frankl's lifework focused on the concept of meaning, not just as an abstract idea, but as something that emerges through the intersection of intellect and emotion. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl argued that suffering, when understood in its emotional context, can become a source of personal growth and transformation, but it requires an openness to feeling that most intellectuals, in their attempt to master suffering through reason alone, often miss. Frankl's ideas offer a radical shift. You can use your intellectual capacity to engage with emotions, not to bypass them. Instead of detaching from the rawness of emotional experiences, you can engage with them, explore them, and allow them to shape your understanding of the world. This doesn't mean you abandon reason, it means you integrate reason with feeling, creating a more complete experience of life. This shift requires a redefinition of what it means to be intelligent. Traditional notions of intelligence focus solely on the mind's capacity to analyze, categorize, and solve problems. But true intelligence, as Frankl suggests, requires emotional depth and the capacity for empathy, understanding, and vulnerability. To break free from emotional numbness, you must redefine intelligence not as cold calculation, but as the ability to understand both the intellectual and emotional dimensions of life. But how does this work in practice? How do you begin to apply this idea to change your relationship with both your intellect and your emotions? The first step is to stop trying to fix your emotions. Highly intelligent people often fall into the trap of seeing emotions as problems to be solved, analyzed, or understood. But emotions are not problems. They are experiences. They don't need to be rationalized or explained. They need to be felt. This is where intellectual analysis must give way to direct experience. Take a moment to think about how you might engage with your emotions differently. Instead of analyzing your feelings, ask yourself, what am I truly feeling right now? Let go of the urge to label or categorize the emotion. Don't try to explain it away or dissect it, just sit with it. Allow it to unfold naturally as a part of your being. The act of fully experiencing an emotion, without intellectual interference, creates a new kind of awareness. You start to see the texture of your feelings, their complexity, their nuances. You begin to reconnect with the rawness of life. This is not an easy process. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to be open to discomfort, and this is where the rebellion truly begins. You must rebel against the idea that emotional numbness is something to be endured, something that can be solved with intellect alone. You must reject the idea that to be truly intelligent, you must be emotionally detached. The truth is the opposite. True emotional engagement is a form of intellectual strength. One way to foster this emotional engagement is through mindfulness, a practice that allows you to experience emotions without judgment. Mindfulness, at its core, is about being fully present in the moment. It teaches you to observe your thoughts and feelings without labeling them as good or bad. In the context of emotional numbness, mindfulness can be a powerful tool for reconnecting with feelings. By practicing mindfulness, you begin to build a deeper awareness of your emotional landscape, allowing yourself to feel fully, without the pressure of intellectual analysis. Another practice that can aid in emotional reclamation is creative expression. Highly intelligent people often excel in analytical pursuits, but creativity, whether through art, music, writing, or movement, can serve as a bridge between intellect and emotion. Creativity is inherently emotional. It taps into the heart, not just the mind. By engaging in creative endeavors, you bypass the need for intellectual control, allowing the emotional flow to take precedence. Through creativity, you experience the world in a more visceral, immediate way. Historical examples abound of individuals who broke free from emotional numbness through creative or existential rebellion. Consider the case of Virginia Woolf, a writer of extraordinary intellectual depth, whose emotional struggles were famously intertwined with her works. Woolf's writing often mirrored her emotional landscapes, using her intellect not as a tool of detachment, but as a means of navigating and expressing deep emotional truths. Her novels, particularly Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, explore the intersection of thought and feeling, creating spaces where intellect and emotion can coexist in harmony. Woolf's life was not without pain. She struggled with depression and the emotional weight of intellectual overexertion. But her creative work serves as an example of how one can use intellect to engage with emotion rather than to escape it. Woolf, in a sense, rebelled against the very notion that a highly intelligent mind must be emotionally distant. She found a way to integrate the two, and in doing so, created a lasting legacy of both intellectual and emotional depth. In your own life, this integration may require stepping out of your comfort zone, of taking risks emotionally, of allowing yourself to feel the discomfort and vulnerability that comes with emotional engagement. It may require a shift in mindset, one that embraces emotional openness as a form of strength, not weakness, and it will certainly require a willingness to break free from the intellectual traps that have kept you locked in the numbness of detachment. But this rebellion is not just about intellectual engagement with emotion. It's about reclaiming your humanity. It's about understanding that intelligence, when truly realized, encompasses more than just rational thought. It includes emotional wisdom, empathy, and the ability to connect deeply with others. It's about breaking free from the self-imposed limitations that intellectualization creates and opening yourself to the fullness of what it means to be alive. So, how do you begin? You begin with the recognition that emotional numbness is not a permanent state. It is a condition that can be overcome, redefined, and transcended. And through this process of emotional awakening, you may discover that the mind, when it stops trying to control and compartmentalize feeling, becomes far more powerful than it ever was before. In the next section, we will delve into the final, most profound realization, the ultimate truth about why emotional numbness exists in the first place, and how its resolution can offer a deeper understanding of your existence. You'll come to see that this emotional disconnect, while painful, is ultimately part of the human experience, and that its resolution may hold the key to a richer, more meaningful life. What if everything you've learned, all the insights you've gained, were not simply a way to fix a problem, but a doorway to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world? What if the emotional numbness you've struggled with, the very thing that felt like a burden, was not a flaw to be eradicated, but a profound and necessary part of your journey towards self-actualization? The final revelation, the truth that ties together the emotional numbness of highly intelligent people, is this: emotional numbness is a symptom of a deeper existential tension. It arises not because intelligence and emotion are incompatible, but because the journey to self-understanding requires a confrontation with the very nature of existence itself. In other words, emotional numbness is the product of a profound, unspoken truth about the human condition, the conflict between our desire for meaning and the inherent meaninglessness of existence. This idea, though unsettling, has been explored by philosophers, psychologists, and artists for centuries. At its heart is the realization that the search for meaning, intellectual, emotional, or existential, requires us to confront the raw, painful reality of life, that it is finite, uncertain, and often contradictory. When you attempt to find meaning solely through intellect, you do so in an effort to impose structure on a world that does not inherently offer it. You seek understanding, not because it brings you peace, but because it offers an illusion of control in a chaotic universe. But this control, as comforting as it may seem, cannot fill the emotional void. No amount of analysis, no matter how brilliant, can provide the depth and richness that emotional experience offers. In this sense, emotional numbness in highly intelligent people is not a failure. It is a defense mechanism against the existential void. It's a natural response to the profound anxiety that comes with the recognition that we, as individuals, are small and transient in the vastness of existence. The intellect, in its attempt to understand and master life, often pushes us away from the emotional, human core that is messy, uncertain, and ultimately uncontainable. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his exploration of human existence, spoke about the concept of more fati, the love of one's fate. Nietzsche argued that the key to overcoming the inherent chaos and meaninglessness of life is not through intellectual control, but through full, emotional acceptance of life as it is, impermanent, flawed, and unpredictable. The highly intelligent person, in their quest for understanding, often forgets this basic truth, that to live fully, one must embrace both the intellectual and emotional dimensions of experience without the need to control or escape either. And so, the ultimate truth is this: emotional numbness is not an enemy to be defeated, but a signal, a wake-up call that calls you to reconcile the conflict between intellect and emotion, control and surrender. It's a sign that you've been living in a state of intellectual isolation, trying to find meaning and security in a world that offers neither. But to move past the numbness, you must allow yourself to confront the existential truth of your own vulnerability and mortality. You must learn to embrace uncertainty, to feel deeply, even when it feels terrifying. This realization, once fully embraced, leads to the most profound shift, the understanding that true freedom lies not in intellectual mastery, but in emotional liberation. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, when you stop intellectualizing your experience and start living it, you transcend the intellectual detachment that has kept you distant from life. You begin to experience the world as it is, raw, unfiltered, and alive. But this liberation is not about abandoning reason, it's about integrating reason with emotion, understanding that each informs the other. The intellect provides clarity, but it is the emotions that provide meaning. The mind offers insight, but it is the heart that brings depth. The final breakthrough is not about seeking emotional depth through intellectual means. It's about realizing that intellect and emotion can coexist without needing to overpower each other. The intellect, when balanced by the heart, becomes a tool for navigating the complexities of life, while the heart, when freed from the constraints of intellect, becomes a wellspring of meaning. Together, they form a more complete human experience, a richer, more fulfilling life. You begin to see, at last, that emotional numbness was never an indication of weakness, but of a misalignment between your higher intellectual capacities and your emotional depth. It was a byproduct of your attempts to solve the problem of being human through intellect alone. But the paradox is this: the very solution to this emotional numbness is not found in further intellectual analysis, but in accepting the paradox itself. By embracing the chaotic, messy nature of human experience, by allowing yourself to feel deeply even when it seems impossible, you create space for new insights, new depths of understanding, and a new way of being. The final realization is that the search for meaning is not a linear journey. It's not something you can solve with logic or compartmentalize through intellectual frameworks. Meaning, in its most profound form, is something that must be lived, not just thought about. It's something that emerges when you stop trying to control it, when you stop distancing yourself from the fullness of your own humanity. The beauty of this truth is that it brings you to a place of peace, not because you have all the answers, but because you have stopped seeking them so desperately. You have stopped trying to control your emotions, to rationalize them away, and instead you have allowed them to guide you into deeper understanding. As you embrace both intellect and emotion, you begin to see the world with new eyes. The intellectual clarity that once kept you detached now allows you to understand life's complexities with a greater sense of empathy and emotional depth. You start to experience joy in the things that once felt mundane, the warmth of a conversation, the beauty of a sunset, the tenderness of a shared silence. In the end, emotional numbness is not something to be eradicated, it's something to be transcended. It's a symptom of the existential struggle that all humans face, the tension between intellect and emotion, control and surrender, reason and feeling. By embracing this tension, by allowing yourself to feel fully and authentically, you unlock a deeper, richer experience of life. You come to understand that the search for meaning is not an intellectual endeavor alone, but an emotional one. And in this realization, you are free. Free to feel deeply, free to connect with others, free to live with both intellect and emotion in harmonious balance. The ultimate truth is that by embracing both your mind and your heart, you transcend the limits of both, and in doing so, you find a more profound, more complete understanding of who you truly are. As you stand at the crossroads of this journey, having come to understand the nature of emotional numbness, its causes, and the profound freedom that lies in embracing both intellect and emotion, you may find yourself forever changed. The intellectual barriers that once isolated you are now dissolved. The emotional numbness that once confined you has been transformed into the gateway to a fuller, richer existence. And in this final realization, you are not just living, you're alive, in the truest sense of the word.